Hello again. This is Michael from TOEFLresources.com, and today's video is how to write a high-scoring TOEFL independent essay. Now, I've already uploaded a video called How to Write a TOEFL Independent Essay, but this one is a little bit different. This is targeted at students who need to get a high score, like an especially high score of 25 points or more. It assumes that you have a pretty good command of English grammar and vocabulary, and that you already kind of know what the TOEFL independent essay is all about, but you have not yet hit your target score of 25 points or more. If you are completely new to the TOEFL, or if your English level is still kind of low, I do suggest you also check out the original How to Write an Independent Essay video. That one goes into some specifics about how the writing section works, what the question types are, and it has a few easier strategies to use. But if you need that high score, if you've been trying to get that high score and you haven't yet hit it, I think this video is for you. So let's get started. The question we're going to use today as an example is taken from the official guide to the TOEFL published by ETS. Here it is. Some people think that they can learn better by themselves than with a teacher. Others think that it is always better to have a teacher. Which do you prefer? Use specific reasons to develop your essay. It's a pretty standard question. There's 155 sample questions in the guidebook. I picked one at random. So, once you've got the question and you've chosen a side and you've decided on a couple of supporting reasons, you have to start writing your essay. And of course, you start by writing an introduction. So how do you write an introduction? Well, the good news is that you can follow a template for your introduction. That means a structure, an organization, and it's only 3 sentences long. But I didn't mention the best part. The best part is that this template works no matter what the question is. As long as it's a TOEFL independent essay question, you can use the exact same template, no matter what. So what is that template? Well, first of all, sentence 1 is what we call a hook. This is an interesting sentence that describes the topic of your essay without yet stating your main point. I'm going to show you an example of this in a moment, by the way. The second sentence is, in fact, your main point. Begin with something like, in my opinion. And then your third sentence is what we call a transitional sentence. Something like, I feel this way for 2 reasons, which I will explore in the following essay. And here's your example. Starts with a hook. My hook is everyone has their own preferred study methods, and all of them have their own strengths and weaknesses. It introduces the topic. It does not yet state my main point, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. My second sentence is my main point. In my opinion, it is better to study with a teacher than it is to study alone. Simple, straightforward, concise. It states my main point. And then I end with the exact same transitional sentence as in the template. I feel this way for 2 main reasons, which I will explore in the following essay. 3 sentences, and my introduction is done. I want to repeat here that the template can be used no matter what the question is. I promise it'll work. Try it out on your own and you'll see. Since you guys are looking for really, really high scores, there are a few things I want you to keep in mind as you do your introduction. First of all, state your main point clearly. Clearly, don't be ambiguous. Some students write these long, complicated, complex main point statements. I hate that. It just leads to unnecessary grammatical errors, unnecessary vocabulary mistakes, and it doesn't increase your score. You'll have a chance later to write complex sentences in your body paragraphs, but the introduction is not a place for that. You want to make it really easy for the grader to understand your main point. In the same vein, don't write an overly long hook. Write one sentence. Write 2 sentences if you want, but don't write more than that. If you write more than that, you're opening yourself up to grammatical errors. You're opening yourself up to making a bad first impression with the grader. Keep it concise. Don't waste time. I think that relates to these as well. Spend no more than 5 minutes on your introduction. The body paragraphs are where you're going to get most of your points. And if you waste a lot of time writing a long introduction, you're not going to have enough to develop those body paragraphs to the level which you should be. 5 minutes at the very most. Lastly, you can summarize your supporting reasons in the introduction, but this is not essential. In the past, I actually taught all of my students to include a short summary of the 2 supporting reasons in their introduction, and that came at the end, right after the transition, but I've recently stopped doing that. Again, I found that the students were taking too long to do that. Even the really good students were taking too long, and that was detracting from their body paragraphs. So I don't suggest that you do this. It's okay. If you feel you have the time, go ahead, but it's not essential. It's not urgent. You can skip it. So that's how you do an introduction. What comes after the introduction? Well, that is your first body paragraph. So the first body paragraph, how do you do it? Well, you follow a template. Go figure. And again, it's the same template that you can use no matter what the question is. So let's take a look. The first sentence of your first body paragraph is your topic sentence. That introduces the reason you're going to discuss in the rest of the paragraph. Begin it with something like "to begin with" or "first of all," something like that. Follow that with 1 or 2 sentences that give general information about the reason. Continue with a transition like "my own experience is a good example of this." Continue with a personal example from your life or from your imagination, which is going to be 3 to 5 sentences. And then conclude with a soft conclusion that reiterates your main point. I'll explain in a moment what I mean by soft conclusion. Before I show you the example, again, I want to stress that this template works no matter what the question is. No matter what the question is, I promise. Try it out. You'll see. Here's our model. Here's our sample. It begins in black with a topic sentence. To begin with, studying with a teacher helps students to stay focused and avoid distraction, which are 2 things that young people often struggle with. It's a clear topic sentence. It's concise. It's to the point. And the grader now knows that the rest of my paragraph is going to discuss how studying with a teacher helps students to stay focused. I conclude with a few more sentences that provide more information about what I mean by this. Students today have a world of technological distractions right at their fingertips, including smartphones, social networking websites, and satellite television. Even when we make firm plans, it is difficult to stay focused on our studies when we can so easily consume some frivolous entertainment instead. Again, this just provides a bit more information about the topic, and it does not involve a personal example. That comes later. The next sentence in pink, my own experience, is a good example of this. It's the exact same transition. You can use this sentence too if you like. And then in orange, a personal example from my life. When I was attempting to learn English for the first time, my studies faltered because I was drawn to my telephone whenever I hit a difficult part in my exercise book. When I switched to studying with a tutor, however, my sense of manners prevented me from using a phone in her presence. Additionally, whenever I tried to begin some idle small talk in order to avoid hard work, she gently nudged me back to the topic at hand. Again, that's a personal example. And as I hope you know at this point, all of your body paragraphs should include a personal example or something like this one from your imagination. This didn't actually happen to me, but it works. It's a good personal example from my imagination. I conclude the body paragraph with a conclusion, a soft conclusion. I progressed much more quickly with her than I did while studying on my own. What I mean by a soft conclusion is one that is subtle. A hard conclusion might be something like, this example demonstrates that students learn better with teachers than by themselves, or this example clearly demonstrates that it is better to study with a teacher than to study alone. Those are fine, and that is exactly what I teach my low-level students, but again, since you guys are trying to get high scores, I want you to be a little more subtle. A little more subtle. Don't say, this example demonstrates that students learn much more quickly with teachers than on their own. No, no, no. I progressed much more quickly with her than I did while studying on my own. It says the same thing, but it's a bit more subtle. I think the key thing for writing a soft conclusion is to kind of keep it within the example, if possible. It's a summary of the example, but it is still within the example. So, that is your first body paragraph. What should you keep in mind as you're writing that? First of all, and most important, include a controlling idea within your topic sentence. Now, you're probably asking, what the heck is a controlling idea? Let's go back and take a look. My topic sentence. To begin with, studying with a teacher helps students to stay focused and avoid distraction. And then, it's my controlling idea, which are two things that young people often struggle with. That's it, which are two things that young people often struggle with. So what exactly is the function of this? Well, some students, some lower level students will write this as a topic sentence. To begin with, studying with a teacher helps students to stay focused and avoid distraction, period. Period. End of topic sentence. But then the grader, he might say, well, so what? Why is that important? Why is that meaningful? Well, we answer him with a controlling idea, which are two things that young people often struggle with. And when he sees that, he'll say, oh yeah, that is important. It is important for students to study with a teacher because it keeps them focused. It is important because, right, young people often struggle with it. So just imagine that your controlling idea is meant to answer that so what question that the grader might have when he reads your topic sentence. It's good practice for that controlling idea to come after a comma. So, what else do we keep in mind? Second of all, be prepared to link your example to your second reason in some way. I'll talk about that more in a minute, but basically be prepared to have a connection between the body paragraphs, and the connection will be the example. There'll be some sort of similarity or comparison or connection between the examples you're using in each of the body paragraphs. Next, as I said, be subtle when concluding your example. Don't say this example demonstrates that. I've already talked about this. I don't need to say any more. Finally, you're going to want to spend about 9 minutes writing each of the body paragraphs for a total of about 18 minutes. The body paragraph is the most important part of your essay, so you should be spending most of your time on those body paragraphs. So, we're going to do our second body paragraph next. You might be wondering, can I use a template for my second body paragraph? The answer is yes. Yes, you can. And it's very, very similar to the template you're going to use for the first body paragraph. Start with a topic sentence. It should begin with something like secondly, furthermore, moreover, something like that. Continue with 1 or 2 sentences that give more information about the reasoning. Continue with a personal example that proves the point. And then conclude it with a little gentle, soft conclusion. The only thing I've changed is the transition that comes before the example. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but basically I just don't want you to use exactly the same transition. I don't want you to say, again, my experience is a good example of this. Use something different, and I'm going to give you a suggestion in a moment. Here's your model. It's long, but what the heck, I'll read it anyways. Here you go. Furthermore, students have an inflated sense of their own ability and intelligence, which causes problems when they try to study alone. Many people believe that with just a good textbook they can master any topic on their own. They are of the opinion that they can create a curriculum all by themselves and formulate their own study plan. However, this is something that only trained experts are actually very good at. As I said above, I began studying English all by myself. I drew up complicated lesson plans and schedules that I believed would predict my progress. Sadly, my plans were poorly made and I did not progress as quickly as I anticipated. When I started studying with a tutor, she immediately assessed my needs and ability level, which was lower than I thought it was, and created a more realistic timeline for my studies. As a result, I have been able to make realistic progress without feeling discouraged. Okay, so as you can see, it's very, very similar to the first body paragraph. The only difference is that I used this as a transition, as I said above. That's nice. I like that. Let's talk about that more. Things to remember in your second body paragraph. Don't forget that controlling idea. Here it is, comma, which causes problems when they try to study alone, right? So my topic sentence is, students have an inflated sense of their own ability and intelligence. So what? Who cares? Why is that important? Well, it causes problems when they try to study alone. There you are. Draw at least a slight connection between your first and second example. My first example, as you remember, was all about being distracted when I started studying English. This example is about how I made bad lesson plans and schedules when I began studying English. So the connection is that both of my examples are related to when I began studying English. I find that essays which have that kind of link between the body paragraphs are a bit more complex, a bit more sophisticated, and I think they result in higher scores. When I'm teaching lower level students, I don't ask them to do that because it can be very, very difficult to come up with interconnected examples. But again, since you guys are trying to get those really high scores, that's what you have to do. Try it. See how it works. Here's the third point to keep in mind. Use a transition like as I said above. I've mentioned that a few times. I think it works well. Finally, again, don't forget to conclude your example with a gentle summary. I said, as a result, I have been able to make realistic progress without feeling discouraged. This is a bit more subtle than this example demonstrates how students are able to make realistic progress with the help of a teacher. It's slightly different. It's better. It's more subtle. It's more sophisticated. It sounds more like you're a native English speaker if you have a subtle conclusion. It can be difficult, but try it as you write your practice essays. And that's the end of our body paragraphs. Just 2 of them. Don't write 3, don't write 4, write 2. I have a lot of students who write 3 body paragraphs, but they turn out to be short and underdeveloped. You don't have time to write 3 good body paragraphs. You only have time to write 2 good body paragraphs. I've said time and time again that 2 long body paragraphs are better than 3 short body paragraphs. Stick with 2. I promise that's the best way to do an independent essay. So once we finish those 2 body paragraphs, we have to write a conclusion. How do we do it? Simple. There's a template. Go figure, there's always a template, and I don't think I need to say it, but I will. The template works no matter what the question is. It always works. So let's check it out. Begin with something like in conclusion, and then restate your main point. Continue with something like this is because reason 1 and reason 2. And here you go. Here's your model. In conclusion, I strongly believe that studying with a teacher is better than studying alone. Yeah, okay. That's a summary of the main point. You could phrase it a little bit differently if you want. This is because teachers help us to avoid distractions and because they can assist us in creating realistic goals and learning objectives. This is a summary of those 2 reasons. Pretty simple. 2 sentences. Some people think that 2 sentences is too short for a conclusion. I don't. The conclusion just serves a function. It's not going to get you a lot of points. Those come from the body paragraphs. There are a few things to keep in mind as you write your conclusion. First of all, keep it brief. As I just said, the purpose is to summarize your main point and your 2 reasons. You could include a clincher if you want, but don't create needless complexity. The clincher is a final sentence for your essay, which introduces your opinion one more time, just to make an overall point about the topic that's outside of your 2 reasons. I used to teach my students to do that religiously, but I do find it kind of creates needless complexity, and it almost always results in grammatical errors. Go ahead and do it if you want to write a longer conclusion, if you're confident, but don't feel that you absolutely have to. So that is how to write a high-scoring TOEFL independent essay. I hope the strategy works for you. There's a few things that I'll mention before we close. First of all, aim for about 400 words. Write a bit more if you need a really high score. I teach my students to write between 350 and 400 words for this task, but since you guys are looking for really high scores, you should be writing 400 words. You can write a bit more. Just keep in mind that at some point the law of diminishing returns kicks in and you're going to not get any points for your effort. Honestly, if you're writing 500 words, it's not much better than 450 words. Use 2 minutes to plan before you start writing. So just sit down and make a few notes. And then at the end, use 2 minutes for proofreading. A lot of my students forget to do proofreading. It's really important. It's time well spent. Even the highest level students make sloppy mistakes that they can self-correct in the proofreading stage. Do your best to save 2 minutes for proofreading. Finally, you should avoid contractions. slang, and other non-academic language. When I'm teaching lower level students, I don't really get bothered too much by the use of contractions, but higher level students shouldn't be doing that because in academic writing, contractions are not acceptable.